Well, this shirt doesn't say gay, so I guess it should be good, right? Hey folks, Max here, and I leave for 5 seconds,
Actually, it was 1 month.
and this happens. I wish I could say I was surprised, but this is nothing new. Typically on this channel, when we talk about legislation, I dissect a bill, report, model, or whatever, and I will wax poetic about these bills as well. Don't you worry. But there is a larger discussion that needs to take place here. Why does this keep happening? These bills are just the bleeding edge of homophobic and transphobic legislation, and like I said before, they're nothing new. In 2021, we hit a modern high of anti-LGBTQ legislation with 17 bills enacted, and those are just the ones that were enacted. Albeit, this year is on track to surpass that. In 2020, we saw bills introduced to limit healthcare access, overriding discrimination laws, and even reimposing conversion therapy. And we could continue to go back every year, all the way back to the Buggery Act in 1533, enacted by CEO of Healthy Relationships himself, Henry VIII. And just like way back then, there was one big reason that leaders, and I do use that term loosely, make these choices. For Henry VIII, he was pandering to the first generation of Bible thumpers against humpers, and Ron DeSantis, Greg Abbot, and friends are appealing to those same people, but with Gadsden flags. Don't tread on me, more like only tread on them. And by them, I mean us. The gays. Yeah. Plain and simple, they want votes, and they want to make it seem like they're actually doing things to improve the material conditions of their constituents, when in reality, it worsens the conditions for LGBTQ folks and does nothing to improve, or even address, the conditions of their victims. I mean, voters. A win-win for those at the top. The reason we, as the LGBTQ community, are back in their sights is because we never left. We live rent-free in their heads, which I imagine makes landlord chuds twice as angry. We are winning this culture war for the most part, like most marginalized groups do. To them, they feel like they can't go anywhere without seeing a rat gay marriage, or a gender-neutral potato, or whatever. Mostly because that's what their propaganda machine feeds them. Conservative pundits working their viewership up over rat gay marriages and gender-neutral potatoes were events that happened. And when I mentioned them, you probably went like, oh yeah, I remember that. It was wild that they cared that much. And I bet when this video comes out, a year after that, and a year after that, there will be even more forgettable culture wars skirmishes. Calling it now, they'll figure out that some of the squishables use they-them pronouns, and then Ben Sabaro will literally shit himself in rage.
Just getting texts in the break from friends who live in Washington, D.C., where I spent 30 years, people being shot all over the city, totally third world place, people living on the streets by the thousands. Do any members of Congress who are worried about QAnon notice this? Does Michael McCall notice this? What is happening to our capital city? They're allowing it to happen. Nothing's more infuriating than that, except maybe
Squishmallows.
Though, this is not the fault of representation. The fault lies with not addressing material realities. While I do like to have quite a bit of fun with their beliefs, the conservative voter base, the blue-collar workers, the disenfranchised lower-class people, have real issues. More often than not, those issues revolve around healthcare, wanting more free time, and more money. But with more free time, they could, God forbid, learn something, or gasp, be introspective. And we hate it when people do that, eh, DeSantis? Constantly to stop people from thinking Republican governors, Fox News personalities,
Squishmallows,
and other pundits sedate them with messages of saving the children, freedom, and America first. Which brings us to the core of what is happening. They want to continue to bolster the population of lower-class people in this nation. And they don't really care how it's done, as long as one exists to work jobs that they make degrading for little pay. And don't worry, I'm not doing a class reductionism here, so don't you dare comment that. The owning class would much rather see certain people on the bottom, but at the end of the day, any white, cis, hetero, able-bodied, etc. people that end up there are collateral damage, a justifiable means to destabilize the target. Bills like Don't Say Gay or the Parental Rights in Education bill try to precisely hit that target. The controversial excerpt from this bill states, "A school district may not encourage classroom discussion about sexual orientation or gender identity in primary levels or in a manner that is not age appropriate or developmentally appropriate for students." An intentionally vague motion that discourages any talk about sexual orientation or gender at the threat of litigation, that in so few words would allow some children to experience the trauma of growing up feeling broken, or various sports bills that would preclude trans folks from participating in sports in some instances up to the college level, which would effectively make it impossible for trans people to leverage sport-specific scholarships and preclude trans people from pro sports. And especially Greg Abbott's trans child abuse report that seeks to have trans people be forcibly kicked out of their homes where their identities are respected. And I can go on, all the way back to the Lavender Scare in the 40s through the 60s. That was literally all about outing gay people and getting them fired. And y'all want to talk about cancel culture. But the more queer/trans people that they can disenfranchise, especially earlier on in life, since that leads to lower chances of gaining education or having an appropriate network required for success later in life, the more populous a lower class that will be subservient to an owning class. Or, better yet in their eyes, disappear by either detransitioning or being murdered by this cruel system. So what can we do? First off, vote in the midterms if you live in one of the following states. But outside of litigation, it's hard to see a route from here. It's still pretty early into the timeline of these bills, and corporations sure aren't going to save us. Though I don't think anyone watching my channel at this point thinks that, but I'll place some organizations that are trying to fight back in the description of this video. But to all the trans and queer folks across the US and one of these states, my heart goes out to you all. And just know that we will get through this and that you are not alone. Not gonna lie, it feels weird doing an outro here, so I'm just gonna put my inside here and you can click things if you want. Okay, bye!